There. Are we good on the mic? Thank you all. So we are going to progress as quickly and efficiently as possible. For those of you who have attended last week, you realize that I am required to read a lot into the record. So I apologize, but here we go again. This meeting, before I do that, I need to take a roll call. So planning commissioners, please respond with present or here when I call your name. Commissioner Bisco.
Present.
Commissioner Cash online. And if you could confirm that she has given a thumbs up or a message that she is present.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Cash. Commissioner Fulford.
Here.
Vice Chair Heyman.
Present.
Commissioner Lee.
Present.
Commissioner Struthers.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson. He plans to join us within about an hour. And so if I could be notified when he joins by the remote facility, I would appreciate it. But for now, we have 7 of the 8 seated commissioners present, and that is a valid quorum. This meeting is called to order. This is the time and place of the public hearing in the matter of LU-24-027. The subject of this public hearing is an application for a conditional use permit to expand an existing landfill. The applicant is Republic Services and the property owner is Valley Landfills. Oregon law requires that I make several announcements for this hearing. This is a quasi-judicial hearing and it will be conducted pursuant to Benton County Development Code sections 51.705 through 51.725. In a quasi-judicial proceeding such as this, it is the Commission's duty to apply the law, not revise it. The Commission must determine whether the applicant has met all of the applicable criteria in the Benton County Development Code. The Commission will consider the record as presented and will also consider any new evidence or testimony that is submitted into the record. Please do not communicate verbally or in writing with any commissioners outside of this hearing process. A staff report has been prepared for the application, and the staff report was available 7 days prior to the first hearing on April 29th, 2025. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that applies to the applicant's proposed development and analyzes those criteria. Testimony and evidence should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written materials while the record is open on the application. Any written materials received by the county staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the county staff in order to become part of the record. No screen presentations are allowed. If a person intends oversized poster boards, reports, or pictures used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be distributed to county staff while the record is open. If not given to staff, they cannot be included in the record. Now a question to the planning commissioners. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an ex parte contact in this matter?
Chair Fowler, I wish to disclose an ex parte contact.
Very well. So Commissioner Bisco, if you could place on the record the substance of any written or oral ex parte communications, and after this disclosure, any person has the right to rebut the substance of that communication. So please.
Thank you, Chair Fowler. After the hearing on Tuesday, May 4th, I had a conversation with the applicant, two of the representatives of the applicant, which would be Mr. Shepard and Mr. Lurch. Conversation was limited to EPA's considerations of PFAS, did not address any of the criteria or any content of this application. And I do not believe that is any basis or any reason why I would be unable to make a decision unbiased solely on the evidence based on the record.
Thank you. Does anyone present wish to rebut the substance of that communication? Seeing none, we will move on. I'll now go through the hearing procedure for tonight. The hearing procedure is as follows. The staff report has been presented. The applicant has presented its case in support of the application. And so now we will hear testimony from other persons in support of the application who signed up prior to 6 p.m. tonight, limited to 3 minutes. Then we will hear testimony from persons opposed to the applications who have signed up prior to 6 p.m. tonight, again limited to 3 minutes. Finally, the applicant may present rebuttal, which is limited to addressing any issues raised during testimony since the applicant's first presentation. The commissioners may ask questions of any persons providing testimony. However, the purpose of the public testimony is to provide information for the commissioners to consider. The public is not permitted to ask questions of the staff, the applicant, or the commissioners. Any person wishing to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. Following applicant's rebuttal, I will ask whether any person who has testified requests an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. Upon such a request, the commission will either continue the public hearing for a period of no less than 7 days or will leave the record open for no less than 7 days for additional written evidence. If there is no request to submit additional testimony or evidence, the public hearing will be closed, the record will be closed, and the commission will proceed to deliberate and make a decision. If you are a participant in this hearing, the commission expects you to abide by the following rules. Please be respectful of all participants. Speak only in the order of the proceedings or when recognized by the chair. In testifying, please do not repeat previous testimony made at this hearing. Just note that you are in agreement with such prior testimony. Be advised the chair may halt testimony if it has become irrelevant, abusive, or clearly intended to harass or intimidate the participants in this hearing. Any written or other exhibits you want included in the record need to be handed to the commission's recorder for marking and to be entered into the record. All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria in the Benton County Development Code or other criteria which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue in this hearing accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission an opportunity to respond precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue. The failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the commission to respond precludes any action for damages in circuit court. To have standing to appeal the decision of the Planning Commission, you must present oral or written testimony to the Planning Commission prior to the closing of the record. Except for the applicant, verbal testimony is limited to 3 minutes total per person. Please respect the time limits so others have the opportunity to testify. No screen presentations are allowed. The public hearing is now open. So we're going to have public testimony this evening. And as we've already observed, this is a larger group than we typically have for our Planning Commission, so please bear with me. We also have in excess of 60 people signed up to offer testimony, and so we'll need to be both efficient and respectful as we go through this. And I'm going to start by apologizing for a couple of things. My list does not have titles on it. And so if you are a JD, a PhD, an MD, I apologize. I don't have your title. And I'm notoriously bad at pronouncing names. So in addition to your name, you have been given a number. And to the extent possible, we are going to accept testimony in the order of the number. So that kind of gives you a sense where you're going to be on the roster, with one exception, and that is by code, we have to separate the proponents from the opponents. And so we're going to start with the proponents, and so those numbers will be taken out of order of the entire list. I'll call the speaker by name and number to the podium here in the front. Anyone providing in-person testimony, it is this podium in the main room. And so if you're upstairs or out in the atria, if you could get yourself prepared as your number approaches, because you'll be coming in here. I'll also announce the on-deck person. On deck is kind of just inside the doors to the back, and that way we can hopefully keep things moving as quickly as possible. When you start, please give us your name and address. Our timekeeper is Ms. Boulder on the side here. She'll remind you of the 3-minute time limit. If you are ceding your time to somebody else, please let us know immediately so Ms. Boulder can kind of do the accounting of where the time is going and who's giving and who's receiving. We will try to take a break tonight. We all want to stay alert. And about 8:30, 8:45 this evening, we're scheduled to go to 9 o'clock. I'm going to pause and we'll do a time check. And at that point, we'll see how many more we have available, how much time we want to go to, and we'll accept some procedural recommendations at that time. If you are a presenter, you may get a question from one of us commissioners. And to the commissioners, to keep this as efficiently as possible, ordinarily I would poll each one of you to see if you wanted to have a question. Let's dispense with that formality. And once the speaker is concluded, just jump right in. If you've got a question, there won't be a large number of questions probably. So if you don't get a question, don't be insulted. But we'll try to just jump right in if you have a question for the speaker. And so we are about to begin, and the first speaker will be Mr. Clifford, number 5, and we'll have Mr. Penning, number 27, on deck. And so, Mr. Clifford, if you are ready, please come up, and you will look over to Ms. Boulder to see your time.
Ready. All right, members and participants of the Benton County land use process for the Coffin Butte Landfill expansion, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jason Clifford, and I have resided in Corvallis for the last 14 years and currently reside in South Corvallis. I am an Oregon licensed professional electrical engineer. Most of my 20-plus year career has been spent designing electrical systems for water and wastewater treatment facilities. While I'm not directly knowledgeable of the engineering related to the landfill design, I do consider myself very capable of evaluating arguments related to public infrastructure. I speak to you today as a proponent of expanding the landfill under this conditional use permit. I understand that there's no perfect solution when it comes to trash. When it comes to long-term material management in this community, considering the pros and cons of each option, deliberating, reaching a conclusion, and implementing that decision will take considerable time and something that should not be rushed. Studying 6 additional years will be very beneficial in making a long-term decision will have the least negative impact to people and the environment of this county, region, and state. In addressing the opposition to the expansion, most of the loudest voices in the community have come from the group Coffin Butte Facts. And the group's initial complaints seem to stem around surrounding counties dumping their trash in another county's landfill. They stated that each county should be responsible for their own trash. However, recently, when they were asked about proposed solutions to this problem, they are enthusiastic about the idea of transfer stations that move trash to larger landfills in faraway locations. In essence, taking trash from one county and dumping it in another county farther away. This is a contradiction. You cannot state that each county should dispose of their own trash and then advocate for shipping that trash far away to another county. In reality, Coffin Butte Facts supports counties dumping their trash in other counties' landfills, just not Benton county's. Somebody else's backyard, yes. Our backyard, no. In relation to greenhouse gas emissions, methane emissions will occur wherever trash eventually resides. Our planet does not care if the landfill is in Benton County, Polk County, Marion County, or Timbuktu. However, Benton County does have the opportunity to mitigate methane emissions at the source by making it easier to dispose of organic waste, using more efficient flares, and educating the public on disposal efforts that will keep organic waste out of the landfill. Coffin Butte is also centrally located between many large population centers, including McMinnville, Salem, and Corvallis, keeping travel distances short and emissions lower from the trucks than they otherwise would be if tons of trash were transferred to somewhere an increased distance away. Moving tons of trash farther away will increase emissions, not decrease emissions. I felt the gentleman with Republic Services put it best when he said that if you want to do the best thing for the environment, you should want to own the problem and take responsibility for implementing the best run landfill and most robust sustainable material management plan possible. Every option needs to be fully evaluated and will have its own pros and cons. Please allow yourself the time necessary to fully complete the journey you've been on. I have been very impressed with Benton County Talks Trash, the sustainable material management plan, and the rigorous and thoughtful approach this county has taken. You're doing the hard work of leading and doing the right thing for all residents and Coffin Butte and its vital public infrastructure. I'll take your questions if you have any.
Mr. Clifford, quick question. Wastewater, you said you have some background in that. Yeah. So can you compare and contrast the Salem Corvallis wastewater and a potential new advanced wastewater and what the difference would be?
My experience is on electrical. While I understand a lot of the topics, I wouldn't understand maybe the water, how to treat the water component. If you want to run a pump, I can help you run that pump. So I can't answer that question for you.
Mr. Clifford, I also have a question. So you refer to transfer stations as something that's being proposed by some of the members of the opponents group. I wonder if transfer stations have, if you could maybe just illuminate the difference between a transfer station and a landfill. My understanding is that a transfer station would reduce the amount of trash that would be going to a landfill. Is that correct from your understanding? My understanding is, I don't know how you eliminate the trash. It goes to somewhere else. That's my understanding. You know, if I understand that Portland sends a lot of their trash to Eastern Oregon, and you know, that's got its pros. It's not, you know, it's more rural, but that's also got, you're moving trash a much longer distance. You know, weight times distance is energy, and that's emissions, and that's everything else. So there's no magic solution to this. Very good. And you also made a comment about the planet not caring if the landfill, let's see, something about the planet not caring, basically about the location of a landfill. Is it your understanding that certain geological features, structures, and regions are more conducive to a landfill as how we mitigate the risks of landfill? Or would you care to comment on that?
I mean, I haven't thought that much about it. I mean, that's not really my background, but I know organic matter breaks down generally wherever it's at. I mean, maybe it breaks down a little slower somewhere else than it does here. But again, you've got to move it much farther away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford, and congratulations on 3 minutes. Perfect. Mr. Penning, number 27, is next with our trial online testifier, Mr. Dahl, number 25, on deck.
Start my timer. My name's Fred Penning. I live at 2910 Northwest Arthur Avenue here in Corvallis. Moved here in the year 2000 and been a property owner ever since. And I'm in support of the expansion. Like Ben Franklin said, nothing's certain except death and taxes. And I think Coffin Butte's end is going to be added to that list eventually. But when and at what cost? Very little lasts forever. And it's your decision. It's going to be a tough one. But when the time comes, I think at least a couple of things are going to happen, my understanding anyway. Earlier talker, disposal costs are going to rise if we have to take it someplace else. Trucks cost money. How far, where? Not really sure. And then the other thing is, county's going to lose a bunch of income. I look at this thing as an asset. The landfill generates a lot of money for the county every year. Where are we going to get that money when it does end? And it's going to end, but I think we might think about pushing it forward a little bit. You know, these things have been called a dump, a landfill, sanitary disposal facility. Belonged to the Army, then it was Waste Connections, later Allied Waste when I came here. But it was also a Benton County asset, still is and will be for the future. How long is going to be part of your decision. Heard numerous objections long list, environmental, traffic, odor, noise. Heard all of those, probably more. But all that stuff can be managed. And it is being managed all over the country by companies like Republic, their competitors, counties, cities that have their own landfills, and they all fall under Subtitle D. So you have to do it the right way. There's no reason why it can't be done. And I think Benton County ought to insist that Republic Service manage our asset, our county's asset properly, so we can enjoy a little bit more time and preclude those additional costs. And then if I could speak to subject NIMBY, I guess not in my backyard. We're in everybody's backyard. I mean, we all use stuff that comes from someplace, whether it's manufactured, and they're environmental and objections to those places too. Think about feedlots, sawmills. Ever been to Campbell Soup's factory or gone past it? I say take a detour. The list goes on and on. All of these assets are jobs that provide livelihoods, and we live in everybody else's backyard too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Penning. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Now we'll experiment with an online person to provide comment. Mr. Dahl, number 25. I think you need to unmute yourself because we cannot do it from here.
He's unmuted.
He's unmuted.
Correct. Hello, can you hear me?
You can.
Great. My name is Zachary Dahl. I'm with Dahl Disposal Service out of Toledo, Oregon. I live in Siletz, Oregon. Please start the time. So I'd like to say good evening. Oregon's landfills are renowned for their advanced waste handling methods, serving as a critical component of our waste management system. These facilities are meticulously designed to safeguard the environment by securely containing waste and capturing the offsets generated during decomposition. The collaborative approach ensures that everyone involved contributes to the responsible disposal of non-recyclable items, benefiting Oregonians as a whole. However, the United States faces a crucial shortage of outlets for recycling, reuse, and waste reduction. Consequently, landfills play a vital role in securing discarded waste items. It's disheartening to observe the social mindset that has allowed us to adopt a not in my backyard attitude. This attitude has led to the unfortunate practice of shipping waste over long distances to remote rural sites for disposal. This practice merely shifts waste from one location in Oregon to another, resulting in the same offsets: leachate, off-gassing, groundwater. It's the same as a landfill situated in Benton County. Is this truly an acceptable solution? The closure of a landfill raises concerns about the potential need for the approval of transfer stations to handle bulked up waste. Transfer stations continue to pose challenges such as noise, odor, bird issues, emissions, and somehow fires that occur. This will result in new land use applications that will draw on the same negative impact that have plagued landfills in the past and during this process. If a landfill is closed, all that waste will be transported through Portland. When companies are forced to ship waste to regional landfills on I-84, multiple trucks will be required to transport this waste. 3 trucks will be needed to haul what 1 truck currently hauls daily, and all these trucks will start to travel through Benton County, which they do now. The landfill expansion is going to attract negative attention, so why do 135 to 300 opponents potentially have the power to influence 500,000 solid waste and recycling ratepayers? These ratepayers will significantly pay higher fees to ship their waste over long distances, which will result in increased emissions that negatively impact our environment. Remember, shifting waste from one community to another doesn't improve the environmental consequences. It merely exacerbates them. You're a commission to look over the facts that deal with land use, and some of the questions have veered completely out of bounds of this commission. This is a difficult decision, but it is crucial to make it a hard choice that affects 500,000 Oregonians. I urge you to support the landfill's continued operation. Thank you.
Mr. Dahl, I think I heard you indicate that the number of trucks to replace that which are currently coming to Coffin Butte would be on a 3-to-1 ratio. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, currently we can haul 3 trips to Coffin Butte Landfill in one day with 1 truck. They're about 30 tons per trip of solid waste. So that's roughly a 10 to 11 hour day. 11 hours is maximum of what we can drive. If we have to ship this waste up I-84, one trip for one 30-ton load of waste is going to take us anywhere between 8 to 10 hours. So we will need 3 trucks to transport this waste that far.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dahl. And by my records, we will now move to people speaking in opposition to the application, beginning with Mr. Crockett, position number 1, and understand he is online. So please unmute yourself and perhaps turn on your camera, and the floor is yours. And Ms. Abels, number 2, will be on deck.
So do we have sound?
We do.
Do we have video?
We do.
Okay, well, let's go. My name is Joe Crockett. I live in Soap Creek Valley, 37609 Soap Creek Road. I strongly oppose the expansion of the Coffin Butte landfill. To start out, after watching Republic Services' 4-hour testimony on May 1st, I have to say I was amazed by how much time, money, and effort is going into a 6-year extension. How does a for-profit enterprise recoup the millions of dollars invested in this expansion, as well as money for the 30-plus years of monitoring and mitigation once it closes? I would guess it's through the removal of the tonnage cap, and most likely, this is only phase 1 of their expansion plans, or there is a hell of a lot of money in garbage. On to my original testimony. Republic Services is trying to convince you that since the expansion area is zoned as LS zoning, they have a right to use it as a landfill. In their application, they state, quote, LS zone was expressively created to accommodate and permit the continued use of the landfill that had existed in this area since the 1940s, quote. This statement is misleading by avoiding the facts. The facts are that when the LS zone was created in 1983 by the Benton County Planning Commission, the staff report stated that the Planning Commission, the Benton County Solid Waste Advisory Council, and the North Benton Citizens Advisory Committee all made an approval for the designation for Coffin Butte Landfill as a landfill site zone on the condition that there be, quote, no disposal of municipal solid waste on the 59.23 acre parcel south of Coffin Butte Road, end quote. Note that in the current CUP, it is referenced as tax lot 1107. It goes on to state in the original document, the proposed zone allows no additional landfill activities unless approved by the Planning Commission at a public hearing. Therefore, the commission may limit expansion into any area that is not appropriate for a landfill, end quote. You, the Planning Commission, have the power to use your discretion to judge this expansion area as not appropriate for a landfill. Through showmanship and misrepresentations, Republic Services is spending huge amounts of money and time to get approval of this expansion. Their fallback position is getting approval with conditions. Approval with conditions is the loophole that allows them to remove the current restrictions placed on the land south of Coffin Butte Road. History has shown that conditions are enacted in writing only and are rarely enforced or monitored. Please, please do not open that loophole. Thank you for your unselfish dedication and understanding to this important decision. We, the residents of Benton County, wholeheartedly support you in using your discretion for the denial of the CUP without conditions. Please reject LU 24027. Thank you.
Mr. Crockett, I wonder if you could clarify, well, thank you for your testimony, but would you be able to clarify your last statement? History has shown that conditions are enacted in writing only. Seems a bold statement, and I'm wondering what you're using as a reference to that statement.
I would have to do more research to get back to you on the specifics of that, yes. But yes, there has been a lot of information made available about different conditions that have not been followed, from my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Crockett.
Thank you, Mr. Crockett. Ms. Abels, you are up next with Mr. Cowger, number 4 on deck.
Hi there. As you might imagine, I'm not Ms. Abels, but she has yielded her time to Jeffrey Kleinman, the attorney for the Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety. And Jeffrey is online. And in addition, there's been
So just excuse me one moment. I'm going to look at council to see if we can accept ceding of time without the individual verbally doing so.
Sorry, yes, we can, but the county has worked out with Mr. Kleinman that at the beginning of his testimony, he will list all of his clients and or people who have ceded time.
he's prepared to do that. I just wanted to help the commission with the transition here.
I think we're good.
Okay, great. And so I'm going to hand out Mr. Kleinman's testimony. I'll give it to the clerk and
Very well, thank you. And is Mr. Kleinman number 16?
Yep.
Is that accurate? Mr. Jeffrey Kleinman?
Okay, great.
I think that's right. You have the
Yes.
list there.
Okay, I have the list, and so, Ms. Boulder, are you keeping track of, I guess we'll, receive Mr. Kleinman at number 16. And so.
At number 2.
No, Chair, I believe Maya Abels has ceded their time to Mr. Kleinman, so he'll.
Oh, so he can have the number 2 position. And is Mr. Kleinman in person or
I
online?
just heard it.
He's online.
Oh, heard him on high. Very, very good. If we could turn the camera and microphone on.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, the video has not yet been enabled.
Go ahead and proceed. We'll wait for your video. Here it comes.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. I'm Jeff Kleinman for Valley Neighbors for Environmental Quality and Safety. At the outset, let me tell you who is ceding time so you can check it off. In addition to Ms. Abels, we have Kent Fields, James Rodell. Kent Fields, I'm not sure I have. Kent Fields, I believe, is in position 21. And then James Rodell in position 23. Josh Dotson in position 24. Andrew Ould, O-U-L-D, in position 32. And Jennifer Johnson, I'm not sure what position she is in, but that would be a total of 21 minutes, including my own time.
And Ms. Boulder, have you adjusted the clock appropriately?
I am about to.
And if you could display it, I would really appreciate it. It was displayed for one witness, but not for another.
Is it not showing on the phone?
It doesn't show until,
Oh, okay.
it will display as soon as we start the timer.
All right.
The timer will display as soon as it starts, so please proceed.
I have Jennifer Johnson. She's on the new list.
Great.
Okay, I don't see the clock.
Are we okay to start?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm told once it starts.
Here we go. Jeff Kleinman at 1207 Southwest 6th Avenue, Portland. 97204. I guess for the lawyers for the parties in this case, you're getting a couple of old Jeffs. What can I tell you? But as a couple of preliminary matters, it's my understanding that staff might be unwilling to distribute written testimony that you're handed tonight to the members, which is going to be essential to follow along, not necessarily on mine, which has also been electronically filed, but some folks have numbers they want to review with you. So I hope that staff will, in fact, distribute the hard copies tonight in front of you. Also, joining Mr. Condit's request that the record be held open for 14 days for additional written submittals. So please bear in mind, as always, that the burden of proof is on the applicant in this case. Just some history here. There has been a commitment to fully and permanently cap and close the landfill and restore the site to its original condition, reflecting the pastoral character of the area ever since the county's adoption of its only duly adopted solid waste management plan, the 1977 plan, a copy of which we attached to our memo as Exhibit A. This commitment has been made repeatedly and has repeatedly not been fulfilled. It was contained in the 1983 adoption of the zone. It was revalidated in every land use decision affecting this dump in 1994, 2001, 2003, and most recently in the 2021 application, which was denied. As Mr. Penning said tonight in his testimony, very little lasts forever, but it appears that this fill is really going for it. And I'll point out too that since the mid-1990s, none of the cells anywhere on the landfill site have been sealed or replanted. So everything, whatever the applicant says about the quality of how they manage things, everything is covered with a bunch of mismatched, ugly tarps. There's been no capping, no sealing, no landscaping. And what they have is instead a bad neighbor policy writ large. And it's a bad neighbor policy which continues to receive Benton County's seal of approval. One question here, what is the darn rush with going forward with this application? They have wrapped up operations on the 59-acre parcel adjoining Highway 99, north of Coffin Butte Road. They have begun operation in the Knife River Quarry site that Republic owns directly to the west, also north of Coffin Butte Road. And that site has 12 to 14 years of capacity. So why not do that and leave the folks to the south alone for now? I would also point out to you that with the closure of the 59 acres and the opening of Knife River, the capacity limits that were formerly established are gone pursuant to the franchise agreement between Republic and the county. So it's Katie bar the door on the amount of trash coming in. All right, then on the subject of the staff report, I think staff made a diligent effort with excellent graphics and all in spite of Petra's terrible cold, and seemed to clearly understand the issues that face the county here. We agree with the determination that the application must be denied, that the applicant's not met its burden, but there are other reasons for that beyond the couple that staff found, and folks are going to address that tonight. Bear in mind, again, the applicant has the burden of proof. I'm not a fact witness, but the fact witnesses are here. They're well organized. They understand what's relevant and what's not, and they will present it to you in an organized manner with relevant material. And along with that, I'll point out that staff didn't have the benefit of the written and oral materials that the opponents are submitting. So to the extent staff did not cover everything, that makes perfect sense. This is the time for the other evidence to come in. And it's not just the movement, the proposed movement of Republic's operation toward the south now, toward previously unaffected or less affected properties that will cause the increased impacts in question here. The movement to the south will serve to sustain a dump that would otherwise close at a certain period of time, within a certain period of time, for 6 more years, a minimum of 6 more years, assuming they confine themselves to the limited height they're proposing for this area to the south, the site that's before you. And this addresses the character of the area, which I'll talk with a bit more, but there has been an emphasis on the part of the applicant, perhaps accepted by staff, that the character of the area is an existing dump. So that does not define the character of the area. Aside from all the surrounding uses, including farm uses that will be discussed with you, what we now have is a dump that would close 6 years earlier without the approval of this. And that's part of the character of the area. We also have the movement and the effect on additional previously less affected or unaffected properties. So to the extent, and also part of the character of the area is the expansion of the Adair Village UGB. That is an existing part of the character of the area. So to say that an existing dump is part of the character of the area does not really define the necessary elements of the character of the area. Staff did not get to conditions of approval because they're recommending denial. But I will say that Benton County can impose as many conditions as it can dream up if this application is approved. Unfortunately, the applicant's existing operation has a solid track record of non-compliance with conditions, and the county has a solid track record of failing to enforce conditions. There's a question to a prior witness about what's your proof, and that will be introduced into the record by fact witnesses who know what those violations are. Also got a couple of initial comments concerning the work product of the Benton County Talks Trash Task Force, which for the most part consisted of citizens working hard on long-term garbage-related issues. First of all, most of those folks worked really hard and were really diligent in trying to address those issues, but 2 things need to be made clear. First, the task force report to the Board of Commissioners was accepted by the board, but not deemed received. I'm sorry, and was deemed received, but it was not formally adopted as county policy. If it had been, we would have appealed it to LUBA. So it is not binding upon you, and you will determine the meaning of the code in this case. Second, a completely different kettle of fish was the legal subcommittee of Benton County Talks Trash, which proposed certain interpretations of character of the area, serious impacts, and that sort of thing. That task force included 4 attorneys, 2 of which work for Republic, and 1 of which is your county counsel, who has been a good friend of the landfill. Hate to say that, but he has been an advocate. And then there was a 4th attorney who would have been neutral. So to the extent legal considerations or suggestions came out of that task force, kindly disregard them. If you're inclined to be persuaded that approval of this application would not result in serious interference under your conditional use criteria, please picture yourselves as homeowners or farmers at or near the expansion site. We can pretty much guarantee that you would find that the proposed operation seriously interferes with your use and enjoyment of your property, as well as with the character of the area. Under no circumstances would you move to or wish to live anywhere near the site, even with the low prices that will result on property sales in that area. You'll have testimony that the prospect of an expansion causes potential buyers to back out of home and farm purchases. Being unable to sell your property is certainly serious interference. If the interference and the impacts were unserious, as Republic suggests, why did Republic need to haul in so many consultants to persuade you otherwise? And why have so many people signed up to testify in opposition? This applicant has a track record, and it's a stinky one, a loud one. In the time I've got remaining, I'm going to talk a bit about your conditional use approval standards. First, under 53.215, the general conditional use approval standards. First, the proposed use does not seriously interfere, that's the applicant's burden proving, with uses on adjacent property, which has been broadly defined in the staff report, with the character of the area and with the purpose of the zone. In terms of the character of the area, we would posit to you that that the scope of the area is not necessarily a rectangle, but is an area defined under the law, under land use law, as the area within which people are able to demonstrate impacts. So please pay attention, as you will, to the testimony you receive, because some of that will go beyond the defined area that's noted in the staff report. Okay, so when you have an opportunity to get into my memorandum, we discuss the conditional use criteria in some detail. First, what is the meaning of seriously interfere under the code? And we propose a definition there that goes through the steps using Webster's Third International Dictionary, which is the source that's used by LUBA and by the Oregon Appellate Courts. And the definition we suggest is as follows. Seriously means to a serious extent. Serious means significant or likely to have influence or effect, deserving to be considered, not of little size or importance. So to the extent that the legal task force on BCTT suggested something more narrow than that, we disagree, and you'll have my proposed definition and interpretation to look at. It would be a disservice to both the surrounding community and to the development code itself to artificially constrain the effect of this approval standard. So then you reach interference with uses on adjacent property, and there's been a mapping, as I indicated, that I think it's at page 20 of the staff report, that shows those, and those include some farms that will be subject to impacts on farm practices, which falls under another provision of the code that's discussed in our memorandum. I think any affected properties should be deemed adjacent as well, to the extent that the evidence supports that. The most intrusive and disruptive impacts generally within the adjacent area for non-farmers and farmers alike are noise and odor impacts and wind-blown garbage from the operating landfill. With respect to noise, you've heard that first of all, DEQ's regulations are outdated. Second, DEQ no longer enforces to the extent it ever did. Some question as to whether DEQ enforces much of anything ever, but that's an editorial comment. And therefore, the noise impacts that have to be considered, and the code does not confine itself to DEQ standards anyway. So it's the noise effects on the adjacent and surrounding areas with respect to which you will receive testimony. Staff recommended denial based on noise impacts. We agree, but aside from the fact that noise regulations are unenforceable, I will mention that one of the particular supposed mitigations proposed by the applicant is that at least their own equipment will have so-called proximity beepers that don't operate all the time, only when their radar detects something behind them. Those beepers are much louder. They're like alarm clocks. So they have their own dramatic effects. And only Republic's own equipment, not all the customers coming in from various companies and individuals, will have proximity beepers. So that's a minimal, if any, mitigation. I would also suggest to you that the science of acoustics does not lend itself to straight line calculations of noise effects, depending upon atmospheric conditions, wind conditions, respective elevation. So the area that will be affected by noise will be quite broad and not confined. The other impact that staff recommended denial based on is odors, and you'll have plenty of testimony about odor impacts. And these impacts affect not only residential uses and people's ability to enjoy the outdoors on their own property, but also there's testimony, written or oral, that farmers are affected because the people that you bring in to work, the farm crews, don't want to be there. It's a function of both noise and odor. They don't, given a choice, they don't want to work on a site that stinks and has those incredibly annoying noises. So it's harder to attract labor, and that affects the ability of the farm to operate. Then we have the consideration of visual impacts also count. And when the mountain of trash arises to the south, that's a new visual impact on the people to the south, including one household that's directly adjacent. And they will provide at least written testimony as to that. As to interference with the character of the area, I've already talked about the baseline character of the area being erroneous, as previously described to you by the applicant and staff. There's a lot more to take into account in terms of the character of the area. And you also need to take into account the use and enjoyment, hopefully, by members of the public generally, of the E.E. Wilson Wildlife Area to the east, and the use and enjoyment of the trail, which also adjoins on another side of the site. So by definition, moving the full operation south of Coffin Butte Road will seriously interfere with the character of the area to the south, as well as to the east and west. All of this will come to you in the form of first-person testimony as to the evidence. Starting at page 13 of my memorandum, we discuss the findings and actually quote verbatim from the Planning Commission's findings in denying the 2021 application, to the extent that those are directly relevant to this application, and only to that extent we've set them out here. In terms of the forever nature of the applicant's operation, in a footnote on page, I believe it's 13 of our memo, we note how if there's a fill operation on both sides of Coffin Butte Road, which would now occur if this is approved, it would be very easy for the county to revisit the closing of Coffin Butte Road, as the applicant wishes, by vacating it when there are favorable landowners on both sides, and the county can go through a simple vacation and the applicant doesn't have to apply for it. There would be a very limited process for that. So then they could dump over Coffin Butte Road and seal it up. I am going to stop there because I've got 4 seconds left, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your information. I have not had a chance to review your memorandum yet, so my question may be answered in there, but you made a reference that land use law defines what a character of an area is. Can you provide what that land use law is? Or
yeah, this was discussed in the first LUBA decision in Stop the Dump Coalition versus Yamhill County, which I don't have a site handy for, but can provide during the open record period. And in terms of the significant impacts test there, the applicant tried to arbitrarily define the area that should be considered for those impacts. And LUBA said that you actually have to look at what the evidence is, and to the extent necessary, then broaden the area. So that's it.
Yeah.
Mr. Kleinman, you made 2 comments in your testimony that I'd like, if you have some further clarification. You referred to the Benton County Talks Trash Work Group report that was accepted and deemed received by the Board of Commissioners here at Benton County, but not formally adopted. I'm missing the nuance of significance there. You've stated it, so is there more context to that?
Yes, thank you. The report was handed into the county and handed to the Board of Commissioners, and they said, we accept it. That was the resolution. So basically, thank you for your work, and here it is. If it had been formally adopted, that would mean that the recommendations, the findings, the interpretations contained in that report, including the legal aspects, would have been formally adopted as policies of the county, regardless of what the code provides. And that is not their effect, because the report was only accepted and not adopted as the policy of the county or the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank
So
you.
the interpretations aren't binding.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is just a brief one. You were talking about definitions. You referred to a LUBA reference, a dictionary, if you will, legal dictionary, and you also referred to a second one, and I just didn't get enough notes, but you did refer to both resources.
Yes, it's set out in our memorandum at some length, and what I said was that the definitions of certain terms that are relevant here, in particular, serious or seriously interfere, can be interpreted through Webster's Third International Dictionary. I believe it's the 3rd edition, is what's formally recognized by LUBA and by the appellate courts for providing the meaning of ordinary terms that are not legal terms. And that's what these are. So you go to the dictionary, and that's the dictionary they use. So we walk through that in the memorandum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinman. And I think I heard you indicate that you would be asking for a 14-day period. I've made note of that. And of course, those procedural motions will be considered at the close of the public hearing after the applicant's rebuttal. But I have made a note of that. So moving on now, Mr. Cowger is next to provide comments with Ms. Sue, number 6 on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Bruce Cowger. My wife, Donna, and I have lived at 37194 Helm Drive in Corvallis, which is in Soap Creek Valley. That's about 5 miles southwest of the landfill. We've been there since 1985. We strongly urge you to deny Republic's application for expansion. In the 1980s, there was no odor of landfill at our house, nor was there in the 1990s. That odor began in the 2000s. Thursday, we heard from Republic the difficulty of correlating DEQ odor reports with wind direction. Their conclusion, odor reports from Benton County residents don't reliably identify the odor's source. So let me ask a quiet and respectful show of hands. Who here is unable to distinguish landfill odor from, say, the odor of a dairy farm? Unable? Unable. Who is unable to distinguish the odor of a landfill from a paper mill? One last show of hands. Who knows that the odor from Coffin Butte that has increased in both intensity and frequency over the last 20 years? Thank you. The written testimony recites methane exceedances discovered by the EPA. Republic has yet to initiate a monitoring program to detect such exceedances. Unmonitored volumes of decomposition gases are likely spewing forth right now, carrying odor and aerosols of toxins and PFAs onto our land, our orchards, and our gardens, and that chemical cocktail is diffusing downward into our well water. Republic has offered zero evidence to refute this blanketing of our county by these aerosols, and given the evolving science of the health effects of forever chemicals, this cannot be dismissed as trace amounts. Any expansion of the landfill will increase the odor and the health risks of these airborne aerosols. The more waste, the more decomposition gases and aerosols. And this will further impact the character of our area. Granting Republic's request for the expansion errs on the side of their bottom line. Please err on the side of our health and the ability to enjoy the clean air, water, and land mentioned in our comprehensive plan. All this warrants a hard no to Republic. Thank you.
Mr. Cowger, I do have a question. I've seen in one other written testimony thus far, and also you refer to it. I wonder if you can cite your assertion of the aerosols of toxic PFAS and other materials coming from those methane emissions. I've not seen any source material that's supporting that yet. If you have any way to verify that.
My background as a mechanical engineer tells me that whenever you have gases escaping an environment, waterborne aerosols are easily picked up and transported. That is just how That's how nature works. I think the burden of proof to show otherwise is with Republic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowger. Ms. Sue is next. And Ms. Boulder, can you confirm whether Ms. Wolf, number 7, was amongst those ceding time to Mr. Kleinman? She was not. So, okay, I'll then Ms. Wolf, number 7, is on deck.
Greg Warburton has ceded his time to me, number 56. My name is Dr. Shelley Sue. My address is 6065 Southwest Grand Oaks Drive, Corvallis. Lived here more than 50 years, hate to admit. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, and attendees, I am a PhD toxicologist. I'm a former EPA employee. I'm a former OSU faculty member, and I'm a longtime cancer researcher. So I believe I'm qualified to speak about the dangers that the landfill poses to our community and to our environment. Last Thursday, I sat through the testimony given by Republic Services, and there were several omissions and inaccuracies presented that gave me pause. And I thought I might address a few of those and have another comment. I don't believe that Republic Services has really performed to the standards of our community with respect to Benton County's longstanding commitment to worker safety, for example. I was unhappy to learn last year that union workers at the landfill were forced to go on strike due to lack of attention to workplace hazards, such as chronic respiratory exposures, improper safety training, and other issues. Last year, the company gave annual raises to all of their non-union employees, but not to the union workers. And the company is under investigation by the National Labor Relations Board. Republic Services has not been transparent, of course, in reporting methane emissions from Coffin Butte and is currently under investigation, as you know, by the EPA. The EPA encountered a lack of cooperation in measuring these methane leaks at the site. Last Thursday, they were still presenting incorrect information about methane leaks. They testified that explosions, for example, are not a concern at this site. That is simply not true. The EPA has documented emission plumes that exceed 100,000 parts per million air concentrations, which is right in the wheelhouse of producing profound explosive events if there's an ignition source available. In fact, the methane emissions at CBL are so high that the EPA has now designated the landfill as a super emitter. Now, in my term at the EPA, those kinds of words were only used to describe the very worst of heavy industrial polluters, and I mean the worst. And it may not be important, but I was a little bit surprised, and one of the persons discussing with Ms. Bisco that they characterized methane as heavier than air, which surprised me because it is not. But whatever, I move on. We all know that methane stinks, but methane is odorless, so it does not stink. The landfill stinks. That smell you detect is probably hydrogen sulfide gases, which was pointed out. What they didn't seem very concerned about those, but it is an unassailable fact that those gases are substantially and alarmingly linked to lung cancer. Okay. There was also discussion about the leachate chemicals. These chemicals are endocrine disruptors and carcinogens. I didn't hear any mention, though, as my predecessor discussed, about the expelling of these gases in PFAS chemicals in the gas. This is a true fact. PFAS burps from landfill gases are highly toxic when they're inhaled, and they can be transported quite long distances. Recent studies by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and other agencies have shown that PFAS aerosols leaving landfills through gas emissions can be similar to in concentration and even greater than the amount of PFAS that you're seeing in the leachate. Everyone's concerned about the leachate. They should be concerned about the air. Again, I did not hear this mentioned by Republic Services, but it is a fact, and I can cite it if you like. The landfill's nearing the end of its lifetime, and granting Republic Services an extension, it just provides a temporary Band-Aid on the myriad of environmental problems that we already have out there that have not been addressed. I think it's also important to point out as a citizen that Benton County has a long, the landfill is in direct opposition to the mission statements and objectives that guide this government and have guided it for a long time. They have a long history of commitment, Benton County does, to economic and environmental sustainability. Benton County has a climate action plan to reduce carbon emissions from all county operations and to be a net zero carbon emitter by 2050. It's a little bit laughable to suggest that buying a few electric buses and replacing some cars with hybrid vehicles is going to put a dent in the county's greenhouse gas emissions when you have more than 1,000 tons of methane gas leaking annually from the county landfill. The Benton County's own website proclaims that the county government's primary purpose is to protect and improve the health of individuals of our community, to secure healthy and prosperous communities now and for the future. I'm quoting this, and that they are committed to a vibrant, livable community with access to a high quality of environment for all. These are all good things. The government should be devoted to all of those things. This is what the government is supposed to do. So I encourage Benton County to live up to their mission statements and other programs promising this commitment to the health and well-being of the citizens of this county and the environment. Granting an expansion is in serious misalignment with those stated priorities and responsibilities. It seems that the prudent thing to do would be to decline the extension and to focus your efforts on the work of securing a new landfill site. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Sue, I'm sorry, Dr. Sue, probably.
Call me anything you want.
Very good. Could you please clarify again your source for the particulate, so the emissions in methane when you
Many,
and
you can go
PFAS?
to ACS 2024. There are many, many articles written about it. You can go to the,
Actually, if I could interject, the Planning Commission isn't free to just go out onto the World Wide Web and look for things. So if the materials that you reference are not in the record, they won't be looking at them.
I will provide it. I'm sorry I didn't write it in here, but I only had 6 minutes. So
Very good. Thank you.
anything else? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Sue. Ms. Wolf, number 7, is next with Ms. Condon, number 8, on deck.
And Chair Fowler, this is Commissioner John Wilson. I am now in attendance.
Good evening, Commissioner Wilson. If we'll have the record reflect your joining us.
Hello, I am not Ms. Wolf. Deborah ceded me her time, and I also had a slot at number 19. My name is Mark Henkels. I'm a Benton County resident, former professor at Public Policy and Administration up at Western Oregon University for 35 years. So that should be in the record that she ceded it. Okay, so I should have 6 minutes, but I promise you I will not even come close.
We've heard that before.
Okay, let's see what I can do. Okay, first let me say, I really appreciate your diligence in this review. You clearly recognize this decision will affect Benton County residents for many, many decades, and you have done a lot of work already and you have much in front of you. Okay, so I help research and write the context and history section of the Benton County Talks Trash document. I originally planned to emphasize how the BCTT makes clear that residents and experts have recognized for over 50 years that Coffin Butte is not suitable as a permanent landfill site. That comes through in the introductory section, despite the fact that Republic was editorially involved in the whole BCTT. Even the Chemeketa agreement, making Coffin Butte a regional landfill, envisioned that it would close by the year 2000, and that only waste from specific areas of Polk, Benton, and Lynn County would go there. Coffin Butte was never considered ideal, and the idea of unlimited waste being deposited defies all historical perspectives. But these hearings have made me focus on 3 other specific points other than the BCTT stuff I originally planned to talk about. First, members of the Planning Commission have suggested, as you have suggested, we need to think broadly when considering the area affected by the dump, especially regarding how the proposed use affects the character of the area. I live 7 miles away and on the other side of Logsdon Ridge, but still sometimes I can smell the facility, more so now than ever before. I also drive up the Independence Road and Highway 99 very, very frequently, and appalled and kind of ashamed about the litter that you see from the landfill traffic. I have personally seen papers fly out of Republic trucks driving on 99W. The character of the area also requires more attention. On April 29th, the Planning Department said that they did not consider the expansion's visual impact a problem since there's already a landfill there. The landfill's visibility and noise have changed greatly since the cap rose over 1 million tons and as the mountain grew larger, truly harming the experience of visitors to E.E. Wilson and anyone driving by or living in the area. Still, the area has many lovely characteristics. And the second mountain of trash and the extension increase of the industrial activities will destroy those characteristics. This area provides highly valuable agricultural, recreational, and wildlife resources. Expansion and the lifting of annual waste limits guarantee that the quality of this area will be harmed more deeply, and there'll be threats going on for decades in the future. Finally, I want to say that Benton County should not rely on any added conditions of approval to mitigate the problems and risks. Conditions of approval are unlikely to be consistently enforced and probably would not address the deeper problems and the risks anyway. Consider how the methane leaks found by the EPA and the state environmental inspectors just recently far exceeded Republic Services' self-reported leaks. No government bodies consistently monitor and enforce landfill regulations. And we should not rely on Republic Services or its contractors for this reporting. The expansion will open large surfaces above and below the waste for all time. Leaks in these linings will create health, fire, hydrological, and climate change risks. As noted in my written submission, a USGS sub-publication notes that the EPA has concluded that all landfills eventually will leak into the environment. Even the existing operation violates the character of the area, and the environmental values stayed in our county codes. It's time to set limits. Thank you for your attention.
You lived up to your
4.5.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Ms. Condon, Ms. Wolf, number 7. Do we know? Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm getting behind myself here. Ms. Condon, number 8 is online. And so Ms. Condon, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ideally turn on your camera with Ms. Palmer, number 9 on deck.
I can't, I'm sure you can hear me, but I'm not able to, oh, there's my video. Okay, hang on.
And we can hear you, yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Condon. I live at 3113 Northeast Willamette Ave in Adair Village, less than 2 miles from the Coffin Butte Landfill. I also recreate almost daily in McDonald Dunn Forest, and my horse is actually housed out on Yvette Lane, which is direct view of the west side of the Coffin Butte landfill. So I see it on a daily basis. And so I drive up and down 99. I can agree with the massive amount of trash that's on the side every day. And I do end up having to take my car in about every 6 months to get a puncture in my tire repaired at Les Schwab. Thankfully, they're very kind about it. So I want to chat a little bit about leachate and my concerns about it. My background is in chemistry, and I'm also a faculty within engineering at Oregon State University. So at the heart of this issue is a silent but serious threat, municipal sludge, which was talked about on Thursday. and hazardous materials contaminated with PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, often called forever chemicals. These substances do not break down in the environment, and they accumulate in our soil, water, and even our bodies. Dr. Sue mentioned a little bit about that earlier. This landfill receives municipal sludge and other materials from across the region that contain PFAS compounds that are nearly impossible to contain once they enter the leachate system. According to Republic Services' own reports, PFAS is already present in the landfill's leachate, and they admit that little can be done about that to reduce PFAS in leachate at the landfill. That's not just a technical challenge, it's definitely a public health risk. And here's the most alarming part. That leachate is trucked to wastewater treatment plants in Corvallis and Salem, as we learned, which are not equipped to remove PFAS. The treated water still containing these toxic chemicals is then discharged into the Willamette River. And this is the drinking water source for myself here in Adair Village, and also communities up the river, including Sherwood and Wilsonville. We are essentially poisoning our neighbors and our environment through this process. Let's be clear, this is not just a Benton County issue. We're impacting communities up and down the entire Willamette River. This is a regional water safety issue. Now let's talk about Benton County's land use codes. Under Benton County Chapter 53, any conditional use permit must demonstrate that the proposed use will not be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare of the community. How can we possibly meet that standard when we are knowingly concentrating PFAS, laden sludge, in a landfill that contributes to the contamination of a major river? Furthermore, and I see I'm running out of time, I talked a little bit about the comprehensive plan, but my concern is that we oppose, or my view is that we oppose this expansion and make sure that we're protecting our communities. Thank you.
Question. If I understand this correctly, Coffin Butte accepts municipal sludge, and municipal sludge contains PFAS. The municipal PFAS leaches into the leachate. That leachate goes to the water treatment facility, but is not treated, it's only diluted. Did I get that right? Is that the sequence? Is that what you mean by it's accumulating?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, and the larger the landfill, the more PFAS that'll be present in that material.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Condon. Ms. Palmer, number 9 is next with Ms. Norris, number 10 on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Debbie Palmer, and I live at 37340 Moss Rock Drive in Corvallis. I want to read you the conclusion of a petition that VNEX has had on our Coffin Butte Facts website since 2023, which to date, over 1,300 people have signed. We wrote this after Republic's last expansion attempt failed, and they withdrew their appeal, but vowed to apply again soon. I'm going to skip the beginning and the middle because it's information you've already heard. The petition title is, "We Need a Plan, Not a Bigger Landfill." People say trash has to go somewhere if we don't let them expand the dump. What alternatives are there? The answer is, we don't know because Benton County has no waste management plan. Other counties have plans that guide them through their options. It's absurd to expand this landfill before completing a thorough plan, including alternatives for decreasing and redistributing the waste stream. Republic Services is in a big hurry to get this expansion approved because of contractual obligations to dozens of parties outside Benton County. This is Republic Services' own problem, not Benton County's. We should not be threatened and rushed into making an irreversible decision to solve the poor planning and overcommitment issues of a huge national corporation. Let's take the time this important issue demands. In its 2021 annual report, Republic estimated that the existing landfill still had capacity for at least 18 more years. That gives us plenty of time for a thorough study of what's best for our county over the long run. It's our future, not Republic's, that's important here. So here we are now with Republic applying to expand again. You have been provided more than ample compelling written testimony citing undue burden and serious interference, which you can use to, with a clear conscience, support a full-on denial of this application, just like you did the last time. Please do not approve with conditions either. Conditions will make no difference. As discovered during the BCTT fact-finding process, never before in the history of the Coffin Butte landfill have conditions of approval ever been enforced. It's magical thinking to believe that Republic Services will make any effort beyond lip service to comply with conditions which will not be monitored or enforced. The largest laughter in the upstairs room watching the hearing last Tuesday came when the phrase self-monitoring was said. We all know that self-monitoring equals no monitoring. To repeat, please do not make an irreversible decision to solve the poor planning and overcommitment issues of this huge national corporation. And commissioners, I want to thank you for all of your time and effort in dealing with this massive land use issue. I mean, it's a monumental undertaking. Please deny unconditionally. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. Ms. Norris is next with Ms. Hall on deck.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Carrie Norris. I live at 38966 Arena Road in Corvallis, Oregon. Commissioners, first I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns about this issue and my opposition to this proposal. I, along with my two daughters, live in Soap Creek Valley at the foot of Smith Peak, approximately 2 miles due west to the Coffin Butte landfill, an operation whose growth I can see and smell from my back deck, and I'll have a much clearer view of the new proposed expansion. The scent is particularly potent on a still foggy days when the air hangs low and heavy. And it absolutely is very noticeable. I am a full-time employee of a local company and work full-time from home, as well as the owner and sole operator of a small CSA, which is community-supported agriculture. From my small farm, I feed my own and several other families with fresh fruits, vegetables, honey, and eggs. In these capacities, I am at home most of the time and outside daily, and thus am highly aware of the day-to-day impact the landfill has on our valley, the ways in which it has changed and increased, and the unique additional damage the approval would have upon us all. In addition to valid concerns about health implications from the methane and other gases carried in the miasma from the landfill that hangs over our valley on some days, our tinder dry summers combined with flammable nature of methane that has been found in exceedingly high levels, and little to any fire prevention strategy beyond using our volunteer fire department, we have many concerns. We face increasing waste at the roadsides, unknown toxic hazards carried in the dust. Odors from the landfill that we call dump days are increasingly prevalent and keep folks indoors. And make no mistake, we are smelling the dump. The land surrounding the landfill is home to a diverse array of wildlife. In the last year alone, I have personally seen elk, fox, bobcat, eagles, and herons on or immediately adjacent to this site and crossing the road to the adjacent landfill. The surrounding community draws their drinking water from wells that are at significant and ill-considered risks by expansion. This cup will allow for exceptional and devastating growth of landfill with no cap or end in sight. If approved, the character of the area and our valley will be negatively and irrevocably changed. This proposal represents a new and imposing threat on our area. It is not the interest of the land, the environment, the community of the immediate vicinity and valley, nor the citizenry of the county to be the forever dumping ground for the Pacific Northwest or Oregon. I implore you to listen to your community rather than the paid representatives of this large out-of-state company whose only true concern is to keep making a profit. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Norris. Ms. Hall is next, and Ms. Dodson, I have a note, has ceded time. Was she amongst the Mr. Kleinman's time? Okay, we'll get to her in a moment then. Ms. Hall.
Hi, thank you. I'm Camille Hall, and I've lived here at 7175 Northwest Mountain View Drive in Corvallis, 6 miles south of the landfill since 1981. My house is tucked into, and I oppose the expansion of the landfill, LU 24027. My house is tucked into the east side of Vineyard Mountain. And even in this protected site, I experience 2 to 3 dump days a year. And these are not little times that you can just pass off. These are days when I spend the day inside or I drive somewhere else. So the only other thing I want to say about interfering with the character of the area is a statement that Republic Services made last Thursday about the basalt of Tampico Ridge protecting the people on the south side from leachate leakage. Well, blasting and excavating to remove half of that hillside will definitely shatter that basalt, and it will no longer protect them. The groundwater will be irremediably affected. The second part that I'd like to discuss is criteria number 2, placing an undue burden on public infrastructure. So in the 2022 annual report on Coffin Butte Landfill, Republic Services reports that 128,000 commercial vehicles access the landfill every year. That's 350 or more per day. We heard commercial Republic Services describe their new traffic flow that will be necessary to utilize the new landfill site. Semis will go into the existing scale on the north side and then turn to go up Coffin Butte Road through an 850-foot left turn lane. But then they will double back and they will come down and deposit trash on the south side, effectively doubling the traffic on that small stretch of Coffin Butte Road. So I'm particularly concerned about emergencies, wildfire, landfill fires, earthquake, or another disaster. The steady influx of trash haulers will be difficult, if not impossible, to stop during an emergency, impeding evacuation, blocking emergency vehicles, and causing trucks to stack up on major evacuation routes. In fact, Republic Services proposes to make Coffin Butte Road unsuitable for public purposes without the formality of closing the road to public use. This is not acceptable. Thank you for your time and effort that you put into this application, reviewing it.
Ms. Hall, could you please clarify? I've seen reference in a number of the testimonies. What is the phrase being used, dump days?
Yes.
Could you expound a little bit on that phrase, if possible? You could give a little bit. But...
Sure. Yes. Well, dump days are when the smell is so intense that you really can't go about whatever you'd plan to do outside. And some days, if it happens in the summer, you're just stuck. The only thing you can do is leave. And it is clearly, I've lived there for 44 years, and I know the smell of the dump. And it is clearly coming from that direction. And in fact, when I drive by it on 99 West, I often smell that also. And it's the kind of thing that makes you go, oh, shoot, I meant to put it on recirc. And, you know, it's too late then.
And Ms. Hall, do you ever report those dump days to either DEQ or directly to Republic Services?
I used to, but it really doesn't seem to make any difference. So I have quit doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. Dodson is next with Ms. Yee on deck. Is Ms. Dodson here? There's a note here that the time has been ceded, so I'll skip over and perhaps someone further down the list has information about Ms. Dodson. So Ms. Yee, number 13, with Mr. Gear, number 15 on deck.
Thank you for holding this public hearing and hearing all of our testimony. My name is Darina Yee, and I live 2858 Monterey Place in Corvallis. That's about 10 miles from the landfill. I strongly oppose Republic Services Conditional Use Permit Application, LU 24027, to expand the Coffin Butte Landfill. Please deny this application. I moved with my family to Corvallis 6 years ago, falling in love with the abundance of nature all around us. Probably like you, I felt so lucky to be living among these generational trees and watching the rushing flow of the Willamette River. I was in heaven. I thought I must have done something really good in a past life to have lucked out into living into such a treasured spot on our planet. But in just the few years that I've been here, there is such a profound difference in our experience living here. It literally stinks on many mornings these days. It doesn't matter the season, mostly if it's still, but even when the sun is shining, like last weekend. I was walking out with my dog and I said, nope, gotta go back in. As comfortable as it is smelling the stench, I know that the smell is just a symptom of the real causes that are harming our health. These toxic plumes and poisons polluting our rivers and soil must be doing some invisible harm to our bodies. The stench is a nagging warning we need to heed. Even our wineries are affected in that when one winery was about to close on a sale, the buyer that day smelled the landfill stench. She backed out of the sale. How many other property sales need to be adversely affected and other hidden poisonous implications of this landfill before we do something about it? Harming our environmental future, the future we share with children, with our seniors and our beloved neighbors and friends, with our wineries and local farms, with our birds, wildlife, and dogs. It's not worth the few extra dollars Benton County would gain in approving this. The amount of testimonies or people in attendance at this hearing is just a fraction of the people in this county who oppose the landfill expansion. Please, planning commissioners, be the change you want to see in the healthy future of all of our families. Deny LU 24027, and thank you again.
And thank you, Ms. Yee. And you've noted is the odor from the landfill, and have you reported that to the DEQ or to Republic directly?
No, I didn't know until the start of this public hearing that was an option.
So I have a question. You said you'd been here 6 years, but that when you first moved here, you didn't notice it. When did it start getting worse?
You know, I started noticing or equating the smell because I used to take my dog up to Monmouth for training and I would pass the landfill and I recognized that smell. So then, you know, at first I was told when I asked neighbors, what is that? And they said, well, maybe it's the paper mill, maybe it's this. But then I realized exactly what the smell is because I was driving past it every week. And I also witnessed trash blowing into my windshield.
Thank you, Ms. Yee. Mr. Gear is next. I may not be pronouncing that correctly.
Right.
Okay. And after whatever I'm mispronouncing, Mr. Gear, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay. So. It's like Meyer.
Mr. Geyer, thank you.
Yeah, I brought in some handouts, but I guess you won't be able to see them. So let me get this adjusted here. Oh, yeah. There are two neighbors that are kindly ceding their time to me. That's Dick Woodcock and Vicki Drewliner. Numbers 65 and 68. Yeah, that's right. That's what I've got.
Okay, your time has been adjusted. Your floor is yours.
Okay, super, thanks. My name's Joel Geyer. I'm a resident at 38566 Highway 99W, Corvallis, on the east side of Tampico Ridge. I really appreciate you've been asking very keen questions on issues that do affect the character of the area and will pose a public burden. In case there's any mistake, I do oppose the expansion. I'm going to focus my talk on the following topics, which are all relevant to the criteria. Number one, really a big gap in the proponent's submission is impacts of the construction period. Number two, risks to water wells and natural springs. Risk for the new landfill to become an additional source of an arsenic plume, additive to whatever might be going on already. And the risk to the Willamette Basin aquifer beneath E.E. Wilson Wildlife Area. And I would also want to touch on the ongoing disturbance to the Great Blue Heron Colony. My background includes a Bachelor of Science and Master of Studies in Mining Engineering, plus a PhD in Geology, specializing in groundwater flow and contaminant transport through fractured bedrock, particularly on radioactive waste. I worked internationally on that topic for 38 years. I also happen to like birds. I do bird conservation research as a side gig. That includes recent peer-reviewed work published in the journal Avian Conservation and Ecology. I served 8 years as the Audubon Christmas Bird Count Regional Editor for Oregon, and I continue in that role for Nevada. My first topic is impacts of construction. The applicant is proposing to build what amounts to a brand new landfill, and they're not just working with the lay of the land. I'm going to introduce a really technical term here. What they plan to do is to dig a great big hole in the north end of Tampico Ridge and a not quite so great big hole for brand new leachate ponds. For the bigger hole, they'll need to move 3.5 million yards of rock. That's bigger, 40% bigger than the rubble from the Seattle Kingdom, if you remember when that was demolished. It's a lot to move. They're going to do a lot of blasting, maybe even daily, and for how long? 1 year? 2 years? We don't know, and they haven't assessed the impacts. You don't have to be a trained mining engineer to know that blasting is kind of loud. Their noise study should have included that, but it didn't. And noise isn't the only issue, there's also seismic disturbance. Does having your windows rattle at irregular intervals count as seriously interfere? I think so, especially in an earthquake zone where all of us should be aware that the big one is ready to happen anytime. That's a lot of disturbance up front for what could end up just being a few years of landfill capacity if the annual tonnage cap comes off. But there's also a risk to our water wells and springs on adjacent properties, which hasn't been addressed. When you dig a big hole in the ground, water tends to flow in. That lowers the water table around your hole, and that effect tends to spread. How far does it spread? It depends on the geology. In my written testimony, I've given more details. But to put it simply, if this big hole cuts into a fractured zone in the basalt that serves as an aquifer for nearby residences, our wells could go dry. Again, the applicant hasn't assessed the effects of construction. They haven't investigated groundwater below Tampico Ridge any more than 100 yards south of the new landfill's footprint. They haven't even compiled a list of neighboring wells and springs. They haven't presented any groundwater models to evaluate the risks. We and our neighbors rely on our wells for drinking water, livestock, vegetable gardens, even small farms. Loss of a reliable well would seriously interfere with the use of our property, no doubt about it. Then there's arsenic. Let's check my time. Okay. Again, I've provided written testimony with many more technical details. This could be a big topic all on its own. Really, it'd be a great topic for a PhD dissertation if there's any grad students in here. What we know is that, contrary to the applicant's claims, the high levels of arsenic in wells on the east side of the landfill are highly unusual for this part of the valley. No one has found such high levels anywhere in the Willamette Valley portions of Polk or Benton County. But somehow the applicant has not just one well, they've got a cluster of 5 wells, all with high arsenic. They acknowledged that they had a leak in the early 1990s, which was responsible for the high arsenic levels discovered in 1994. They don't know how long that was going on before that, but they did find out at that time. They claim to have baseline data, but their historic database included with the 2023 annual environmental monitoring report doesn't show any arsenic data prior to 1995 from the well that they're now claiming is baseline. And the levels keep bouncing around, despite statements about them being stable. After I pointed out to Oregon DEQ that the existing permits don't have any site-specific allowance for this, lately VLI seems to have proposed permit-specific concentration limits, PSCLs, for arsenic. I had a plot of page 3, which would show you the plot of the arsenic data from their 2024 annual monitoring report, which compares with the new criteria. You can't see it, but the most recent measurements blow right past their new proposed limits. So they thought they had it figured out. They said, these can be our new rules we have to go by. The next year, they've gone right past them. They actually had to replot the scale on the plot because these are so much higher than anything they measured before. Despite that, now they want you to believe that the recent observations are, quote, natural and not a sign of more leaks. Last Thursday, their consultant read a memo that gives a complicated explanation about volcanic soils, anoxic conditions, and so on. In simpler terms, they're saying that the existing dump, by sealing off the water from the air, has changed the chemistry so that arsenic is now leaching out of the soils. Time here. It's an interesting hypothesis, but without more evidence, it's just speculation. In my field, we call this geopoetry. For the sake of argument, let's suppose they're right. What would that mean for your decision? It means that the new landfill, even if it doesn't leak, could have the same effect by leaching arsenic out of similar rock and soils beneath it. The new landfill could generate its own arsenic plume, which would spread east into the valley, merging with whatever plumes there are from the existing landfill. The effects would be additive. As Commissioner Lee noted last Thursday, there are adjacent properties downhill to the east, immediately E.E. Wilson Wildlife Area. There's also a third dimension. We like to think in 3 dimensions and even 4 sometimes. Vertical. I had a cross section that shows the valley, but what you need to know is that as you move out from the landfill, you're basically on the shore of the old lake from the Missoula floods. As you move out, you get into sediments, and below that is the Willamette Basin fill aquifer. That's a big one. Here's what the Oregon Water Resources Department has to say. Quote, collectively, the basin fill sediment unit contains the largest volume of groundwater in storage and has the highest production capacity of all the hydrogeologic units in the basin, end quote. In other words, this is the aquifer used for high capacity irrigation wells for crops and for municipal water supplies. You don't want to mess that up. That would be a real burden on public resources. The applicant hasn't evaluated that risk which arises from this new landfill. They don't even have a handle on what's happening with the old one. Lastly, I'd like to speak up because I like birds, for the great blue herons. Rumors of their disappearance are greatly exaggerated. Despite repeated disturbance by excavation equipment operating in the proposed development area in all 4 nesting seasons since 2001, when the applicant was advised of the need to keep a quarter-mile buffer, the herons haven't actually abandoned this location. They're nesting right across the highway, within 200 yards of where they nested in 2022. I have a photo in there just from last Sunday. You can enjoy it when you get done with this meeting and don't want to go to bed yet. They're still under stress. They're becoming agitated when roadside trash crews walk past their nests, which happens almost weekly now because there's so much trash coming from this landfill. The sheriff sends out a crew almost every week. I've advised them not to. Hopefully they'll stick to it. But construction of the new leachate ponds on Forest Conservation Parcel Lot 1200 would once again impinge on the buffer zone mandated by the Oregon Department of Forestry. That gives you one more reason to deny this application. Thank you for your diligence and your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, guys. Mr. Geyer, is everything you just said in what you handed in for us to look at, your written document?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit more in the written documents that I've submitted. I guess the packets are sort of catching up.
Very good. And then you mentioned something mandated by the Department of Forestry here at the end. Could you again restate that and some context that might help?
Yeah, there's we might want to reintroduce the testimony that was brought up in 2021 regarding the Oregon Department of Forestry rules, which mandate a quarter-mile buffer zone during nesting season. And because that is a forest conservation parcel, I believe the Department of Forestry rules apply. But we can make sure that's on the record.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Geyer. And we will now take a 10-minute break, which means at 8 o'clock, we'll return with Mr. Levitt, number 17, followed by Mr. Lemke, number 18. Yeah. Okay, very well. Resuming public testimony with Mr. Levitt, number 17, and Mr. Lemke, number 18 on deck. It is, it's fine.
Becky Merja, speaker 67, and Todd Rowland, speaker 69, have ceded their time for me.
What was that second number, please?
69 for Todd Rowland.
Okay, Ms. Bowler, we all caught up with the numbers? Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Fowler and members of the Commission for allowing me to speak here today. My name is Mason Levitt, and I am testifying on behalf of Beyond Toxics, a decades-old Oregon-based environmental organization that fights for all Oregonians to have access to clean and safe air, water, and land. Our organization has worked with Soap Creek Valley and Adair Village residents for 3 years to find solutions to many of the challenges posed by this facility, and I have been there through that journey. My background is based in geographic information systems, or most commonly known as GIS, and I have been trained to map, model, and analyze spatial data. In addition to my role at Beyond Toxics, I am currently a master's student at the U of O in the Department of Geography doing this exact work. Today, I want to draw attention to the odor study, which the county has determined as grounds for denial. This is due to the fact that the applicant has used an outdated software version and did not adequately take into account elevational differences. I wish to elaborate on why this odor study is neither comprehensive nor objective. But first, I want to add some related details to the record. 1, the applicant highlighted the newly installed enclosed landfill gas flare as an important piece of infrastructure to manage landfill gas. I want to note for the record that DEQ announced the requirement of enclosing all landfill gas flares in 2022. The applicant received multiple notices and extensions to comply with this requirement and failed to do so, resulting in an enforcement notice from DEQ. It is installed now, but this process is illustrative of how laborious it is to get the applicant to comply with required operating conditions. 2, the applicant has waited until last week's hearing to announce their intentions to install fence line monitoring for odorous pollutants. Beyond Toxics and residents have been pressing for this for years now, and that technology has been available the entire time. I want to note that the applicant's odor study did not incorporate any real-time air monitoring despite the availability of that technology. Third, I want to problematize the applicant's claim that they found 99% of odor complaints to be impossible, despite acknowledging they were working with an incomplete data set that does not have the time or location of odor detection. It is worth elaborating on this. How can we know that someone didn't smell the landfill because the wind was blowing the opposite direction of their location if we do not know their location or the time of day and consequently the direction that the wind was blowing at that time? Additionally, when we find a model invalidates 99% of human observations, we typically conclude that the model is wrong. I teach GIS part-time at the U of O, and I would fail any student who made a similar claim without adding additional explanation. Next, I want to turn to some additional assumptions of the applicant's odor study that need more explanation. The applicant has chosen to go with an atmospheric modeling system using weather data from Coffin Butte, Salem Airport, and Corvallis Airport. Using this data, they have made an educated guess on how air moves around the nearby area of the landfill. As the famous saying goes by a British statistician, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Models have a fundamental limitations, and they cannot and do not reflect all of the complexities of the real world. Modeling is a great tool, but it is not the entire picture, and there are many other tools in the toolbox the applicant has chosen not to deploy, including the aforementioned air monitoring. Models are a series of mathematical equations. If you change the numerical inputs or the parameters, you get different results. Choosing those inputs is not an objective decision. It is subjective to the applicant's preferences. One of the most important assumptions made by the applicant is that the facility has a 25% fugitive emissions rate. Mind you, they used to claim it was 10% before revising their numbers a year ago quietly. Recall, fugitive emissions are landfill gas emissions that are not captured by gas extraction wells and other gas controls. I want to complicate that 25% number, and planning commissioners brought up two important questions last session I would like to answer. What about all of the photos of holes in Coffin Butte's tarps and meticulously documented by residents? Recall, the applicant stated that they do regular surface emissions monitoring, now referenced as SEM, surface emissions monitoring, to repair these holes. This prompted the second question. Do we have results of the SEM monitoring done by the applicants? I have submitted those both for the public record as of today. First, let's look at the EPA inspection. Coffin Butte has been inspected twice by the US EPA, which uncovered over 100 violations, some of them 200 times the regulatory limit. The first time EPA inspected the landfill in 2022, Coffin Butte had done their own SEM monitoring 10 days prior, where they found and self-documented 6 leaks between 500 parts per million and 1,500. The EPA found 71 leaks between 500 parts per million and over 70,000 parts per million, and they only monitored a small portion of the landfill. They also found that the applicant had not been complying with several standard testing procedures as required by Oregon law. This is now part of your record. A similar story occurred in 2024 with 41 leaks between 500 and 118,000 parts per million. The applicant is currently under investigation for failing to meet Cleaner Air standards, Cleaner Act standards. Secondly, I have analyzed surface emissions monitoring reports submitted to Department of Environmental Quality by all Oregon landfills, legally required to do so. I found records that show that Coffin Butte is choosing not to monitor 56% of their landfill surface area using a legal loophole. I have attached in a report as part of my written comments. This is above average for all privately operated landfills in Oregon, which on average emit 50%. Publicly operated landfills, on the other hand, emit about 10%. Coffin Butte claims that some of their slopes are too steep or too covered in vegetation, meaning that they can't monitor them. These slopes are slopes operators designed and vegetation they have chosen not to maintain. And the legality of these exemptions are ambiguous at best or illegal at worst. We will find out what the EPA has to say. Additionally, third-party satellite flyovers have found massive plumes of landfill gas that can be observed from space from Coffin Butte. They have flown over the landfill operation 6 times over the last 2 years and found massive plumes 100% of the time. The working face where garbage is currently being deposited is a site of significant fugitive emissions. Coffin Butte claims they limit their working face to a ½ acre at any time. This is elaborated on in the Benton County Talks Trash report. I have submitted nearly a dozen random satellite images showing otherwise, and that their working face is most often between 1.5 and 2 acres, 3 to 4 times their claim. They also claim that they cover this working face with daily cover every day, and photographs from residents in the record clearly show that this is not the case. Additionally, I have used air monitoring equipment to document hydrogen sulfide levels at residential households. This is the classic rotten, eggy smell we all smell in our garbage, and all residents are very familiar with. Through monitoring, we have found hydrogen sulfide levels between 250 and 500 parts per billion. This is well over the human detection threshold of 30 parts per billion. I have also worked with Linfield University students to conduct a door-to-door survey of all 500 homes in Adair Village. Of 126 households that spoke to us, we found that 60% of residents reported regularly smelling the landfill, and many were specific that the smell is distinct from the compost facility. 20% of residents reported having modified their daily activities to avoid going outside due to the smell being unbearable or concerns over being exposed to air pollutants. Remember, all models are wrong, but some are useful. The applicant's model is serving a purpose to cast doubt on hundreds of people's lived experiences. The applicant has offered no explanation for the discrepancy between their odor study results and the experience of residents. They have offered no explanation of why their gas collection system is failing and how they plan to fix it. I urge the Planning Commission to believe the residents' experience and to acknowledge the applicant's reliable record of bad behavior.
So, Mr. Levitt, in the report on last Thursday, the environmental consultant for the applicant used a unit of measure 1 over, I think it was DT. I'd have to go back and look. With your measurements of hydrogen sulfide that you took, can you compare your measurements to 1 over DT?
I can. I do not know how to do so off the top of my head, but I will be sure to follow up on that by email.
Thank you.
So I'd like to review, you said you did a survey at Adair Village and 60% reported, what did 60% report?
Regularly smelling the landfill operations.
And how many people is that about?
126 out of 500 homes. I don't know what the average household number is. We can imagine that's between 2 and 3 people per household.
And then you said 20% modify their, 20% of respondents modify their daily routine.
Yes.
And how many people is that approximately?
20% of, oh, you're testing me on the fly.
I'm sorry.
No worries. That's about 25 respondents out of the 126, and that is about 2 to 3 people per household, so between 50 and 75.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt.
Thank you.
Mr. Lemke is next with Ms. The name has been truncated for me. Ms. Carol McClelland, and unfortunately the surname is truncated. Fields, thank you.
Hi, hey, thank you very much. My name's Keith Lemke. I've resided in Trillium Lane, about a mile west of Coffin Butte since 2003. I have a doctorate in public administration, over 40 years of experience in public service. I'm against the expansion, and I urge you to consider 3 additional criteria in your analysis, which have been kind of ignored by the staff. One is the public mandate, or actually lack of, safety assurance, and the cumulative effects of the pattern of life. My research reveals a longstanding belief among the county population since at least 74 that the Coffin Butte landfill would be temporary with a long-term vision of an advanced waste management system. The beginning of the evolution from county dump to regional landfill started with the Chemeketa Region Solid Waste Plan of 74. It was a collaborative effort between Benton, Lynn, Marion, Yamhill, and Polk counties and the DEQ to solve a burgeoning waste problem. It had 5 goals, 5 stated goals, culminating in the end of landfill operations and the creation of advanced waste disposal management systems. The plan consisted of the 5 counties, waste going to Coffin Butte, while the separate components of the advanced waste management systems were developed in all the counties to share the burden. While waste delivery to Benton County proceeded, the rest of the plan did not materialize. That's how we got here. Since its franchising in '85, Coffin Butte has incrementally evolved to receive waste from up to 27 counties. The fact is, I cannot find a record of any public referendum on the plan or any of the expansions thereafter. It seems like the county considered the lack of significant opposition to the expansions as some kind of unanimous consent to the landfill's expansion. And unfortunately, every lawyer in this room will know that that's nonsense. Guardianship, the Oregon Revised Statute 459 bestows upon the Department of Environmental Quality and the local county government the responsibility to oversee and uphold the contractual statutory obligations of the franchise and landfill. ORS 45992 grants them the power to conduct inspections, stipulate permit conditions, and impose penalties. They are entrusted as our vigilant custodians. Regrettably, as has come to our attention throughout these proceedings by both parties, they can't do these things, or they haven't. So they either apparently lack the technical capability or resources to protect us, and that's not fair to us. So as we expand, how's that going to change? If they can't do it now, how are they going to do it later? And finally, there's been no evaluation conducted on the combined impact of the various categorized minor disturbances involving air quality, traffic, noise, visual, potential hydrological problems, and decrease in property value. These factors all appear insignificant in the grand scheme, but I can guarantee you, someone who lives there, they affect us every day. One of those is going to affect us. So it's the cumulative effect that's causing the dramatic difference in our patterns of life. Patterns of life affects culture, and culture, by the way, is doctrinally a part of the environment. So, thank you very much.
Mr. Lemke, if I could ask, have you submitted that testimony in writing for the record?
This?
Yes.
No.
Can I request that, or would you be willing to do so?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
I will. I submitted a different one for a different purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Lemke. Ms. McClellan Fields is next with Mr. Dodson on deck.
I am not Carol.
Okay.
So I will be speaking with seated time from Carol McClellan Fields, from Catherine Stearns, from Betsy Conover, and also David Pat. So
Do you happen to have their numbers? We can find their names more quickly with their
I
numbers.
just handed them over there.
Are you?
And if I may, Chair, what was your name, sir?
My name is Ken Eklund.
Thank you.
And are you on the list in a number
I am,
somewhere?
I think
Just
I'm
so we
number
can.
49, sorry.
49, perfect. Okay, thank you. Proceed.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Fowler and Planning Commissioners. I'm Ken Eklund. I live at 37340 Moss Rock Drive in Benton County. Thank you, Carol, Catherine, Betsy, and David, for gifting me time to speak. First, I'll read you testimony about fire hazards on Carol's behalf. My name is Carol McClellan Fields, and I live at 37326 Soap Creek Road, about 4 miles from Coffin Butte Landfill. I strongly oppose Republic Services' application to expand the landfill. I urge the Planning Commission to deny this application. Benton County has a number of official initiatives dedicated to assessing the wildfire risks associated with wildland, urban interface areas, and identifying strategies to reduce those risks. Most notably, the Benton County Vision for Wildlife Management and the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Oregon state law places a significant focus on wildland urban interface areas that have, quote, sufficient fuels, including combustible fuels and infrastructure, to generate a conflagration. Unfortunately, there is a garbage truck-sized hole in Benton County's vision for managing wildfires. The Community Wildfire Protection Plan inventories the high voltage power lines in the region, but somehow misses the fact that there's a methane belching landfill in the northern forest area that has a documented pattern of landfill equipment and working phase fires. In my written testimony, I have an email transcript that shows that Coffin Butte Landfill was intentionally left out of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan because staff didn't understand what the fire risks were. Benton County cannot afford to make a decision to expand the landfill without a full understanding of the fire risks associated with landfills. The current landfill is an immense flammable target for airborne embers from nearby fires and a source of airborne embers that will only get bigger if the expansion is approved. The risk and threat of fire cannot be minimized or dismissed. In my written testimony, I provide more details about landfill fires and local fires in the past 2 years. Any operations plan for Coffin Butte Landfill put forth by the applicant can't erase the enhanced fire risk in our region. The flammable, explosive nature of the landfill's gas plumes and the toxic consequences of any fire there creates a dangerous scenario for a devastating, irrevocable change to the character of our area. A sizable fire at the landfill would put undue burden on fire and emergency management services and on local and regional residents forced to flee the flames or the plumes of toxic smoke from a landfill fire. I strongly oppose Republic Services' application to expand the landfill. I urge the Planning Commission to deny this application. Thank you. And so that's the testimony from Carol McClellan Fields. And now I'll go to my testimony. Commissioners, I want to take you back in time to less than a year ago when the EPA Air Enforcement Officer for this region arrived with her team at the dump to continue the EPA's investigation of Coffin Butte Landfill. She reports there's a strong landfill odor. The landfill operatives assure me that all systems show normal. So now the inspectors walk out onto the landfill at random and find leak after leak. They are finding a reportable leak once every 3 minutes on average for an hour. And then they come across a landfill gas well that's completely uncapped. It's beyond leaking, it's just venting landfill gas straight into the atmosphere. How long has that well been uncapped? Unknown. All systems are normal. How many other wells are there like this? Unknown. All systems are normal. How much gas is coming out? The Air Enforcement Officer measures it at 12% methane, which is 240 times the limit. I think our main takeaway here is that the dump operators were correct. Their gas collection system was operating normally. It's normal for Coffin Butte Landfill to have dozens of leaks and at least one that's super emitting. Every independent survey of the dump shows this. No reason to expect the expansion will be any different. The volume of these landfill gas emissions drive many serious problems at the dump, most notably odor, climate damage, toxics pollution, and fire. I'm going to talk about the first three of these, but remember, these are like the heads on the same multi-headed dragon, the dragon being landfill gas. Odor. The applicant's odor report uses an industry standard to estimate how much landfill gas is leaking out for people to smell. It doesn't use a figure specific to Coffin Butte Landfill. So needless to say, I hope, this odor report is invalid. They're not grounding this study on the volume of gas actually leaking out of the dump. They're using some industry average instead. For obvious reasons, I would say. In response to community complaints, the EPA inspected the dump in 2022 and found over 60 leaks, 4 at explosive levels. And then an EPA air enforcement team returned in 2024. As I told you, they found 41 leaks, 3 at explosive levels, plus that uncapped well. EPA air enforcement then served an EPA Clean Air Act Section 114 process on the dump in early 2025. These aren't things that happen to your average landfill. The applicant's odor model doesn't account for any of this. It also doesn't account for the landfill's expansion increase in the dump's total surface area, 35% more, which would lead to a proportional increase in gas emissions from leaks, nor the landfill's the expansions increased in intake volumes, 68% more, which would likewise lead to a proportional increase in landfill gas generation. For all these reasons, I suggest the applicant has failed their burden of proof for odor. Likewise for methane pollution, climate damage. As you know, methane is a pernicious greenhouse gas, and as we've seen, Coffin Butte Landfill leaks a lot of it and is going to leak more. Climate damage meets your review criteria in many ways, but I'll focus on one. By reducing the disaster assistance service available to the area. As you know, climate damage is accelerating the number and severity of disasters nationally, draining disaster response resources. And the people who are losing out are the people in rural areas. We're seeing this happen already with the LA fires. People in major metro areas get disaster assistance. People outside metro areas don't. So the climate damage from landfill gas is increasing the risk of disaster in our area. And by also increasing the incidence of disaster nationally, it's also decreasing our likelihood of getting help when we need it. This disparity will only accelerate as climate shifts get more extreme and disaster funds get exhausted. Let's move on to toxics damage. When I smell the landfill, what is it that I'm smelling? What's in landfill gas? Too many things even to list, it turns out, some pretty evil stuff. So again, I'll focus on just one thing, one we all know by now, PFAS. Studies show that these forever chemicals get airborne and escape the dump in landfill gas. They're not destroyed by burning. They're called forever for a reason. So they're coming out of the stack at the power plant, at the flare, and of course, out of leaks or gas wells that are left uncapped. This PFAS is steadily accumulating in the surrounding environment, which really drags down the character of our area and torpedoes the idea that the dump will someday export landfill gas into the natural gas system. I mean, no one wants PFAS delivered straight to their home. Odor, methane toxics, Republic's burden of proof fails in all of these, and all of them go against the character of the area. Speaking of character, Commissioners, I think the word character is being tortured in this application. The application would have you believe there's a visual character, which is a small area around the landfill, and the odor character is 90 square miles. The methane character is a memo saying we haven't been fined, and so on. These are all snapshots. They have no past and no future. Commissioners, that's no one's idea of character. Character is one thing, not separate things, and it's built over time. It's not a snapshot. The character of an area is the understanding that people acquire about that area through all their experiences of it. And it's more than just its physical forms. Character is first and foremost a social value. I'm a writer professionally, and so I've thought about character a lot. By social value, I mean there are things that are in character and things that are not. You bike down Soap Creek Road and you see farms and trees and people's rural houses. There are horses in a pasture. Here's a vineyard. Someone waves at you, you wave back. You can ride like that for 40 miles. That's character. And when you continue on and see trash piled along the road, you think, that doesn't belong here. And when you see a mountain of garbage draped in tattered plastic, you say, that doesn't belong here either. And when you're biking through E.E. Wilson and you smell that chemically smell, you say, that's wrong, that's out of character. Or rather, you say, I hope that's out of character. We need to do something about those wrong things. We need to have less of them, or else they will become the new character of this area. And what Republic is proposing in this expansion application is not to have less of these wrong things, but more. Roughly 50% more, in fact, year by year and for longer. Commissioners, you live here, you know the character of this area, which is why the law has chosen you to make the decisions you do about land and giving you the word character to base your decisions on and the word discretion to support what you decide. These are your words. Don't let them get tortured. Set them free. A word about conditions of approval. Commissioner Bisco has expressed that conditions of approval on the dump have never been enforced. And you all heard for yourselves that there's no enforcement mechanism in place and none contemplated. I can assure you this is true. I'm speaking now from my experience as past chair of the County Disposal Site Advisory Committee. The reality is, commissioners, you have only a clean decision before you, approve or deny. Nothing in the middle. Anything in the middle continues the status quo, which poses an undue burden upon the community. Anything in the middle is saying that we are the sheriff of this lawless town, but with no badge and no gun. Your criteria enjoin you from approving an application that imposes an undue burden. So if you feel the application must have conditions, you should properly and promptly vote deny. You know, I ballparked how much it's cost the community to resist Republic's attempts to expand the landfill so far. Volunteers have put in about $1.2 million worth of time. In case you were wondering how undue that burden has been so far. I'm getting close to the end. I have just one more thing. I want to speak up for the land, that 59 acres. Right now, it's a few industrial buildings, but mostly it's wildwoods on shady slopes. There's nothing wrong with it. The herons love it. If you take away the open trash heaps, which bring too many eagles in, our species of concern will be back in their rookeries raising chicks. It just seems incredible to me that because a company would like to despoil this bit of land for their profit, that such a thing could happen. I kind of thought we were past the days of robber barons and strip mining. It just seems incredible to me that someone can look at this piece of land and say, you know what this community needs? For us to dig a 150-foot deep hole here and fill it with other people's garbage until it's higher than the hills, which is what it will be and how it will be permanently, forever and ever. Amen. Of course, we are past the days of robber barons and strip mining. We have two things now that weren't present then. One, we have the knowledge of how these things turn out. We can remember. There is no Peabody Coal Company anymore. Once it was huge. The only thing left of it now are the folk songs about how it tortured the timber and ruined the land. The other thing we have now is we have a planning commission. We have you. People from here who can look at the evidence and decide what's truly best for our community, who can do what's best for the land, who can listen to what the land says about character. Thank you for your attention. Deny this application. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund. I believe Mr. Dodson is next with, pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't check that one. Ms. Yoshihara is next. With Mr. Monroe, number 28 on deck.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your volunteer service and the care you are putting into reviewing the CUP. My name is Faye Yoshihara. I live at 37461 Soap Creek Road. I oppose LU 24027 due to its impacts on the character of the area. I am short. Chair Fowler, you asked how to square Mr. Ledford's odor analysis with our lived experience of dump days. Beyond wind direction, we have cloud cover, elevation, topography, temperature, humidity, all interacting with wind and human-caused air currents. In a former life, I was a sensory scientist working with human panels to discriminate odor profiles for the purposes of claim substantiation. Mr. Levitt already submitted the examples of the landfill stench, the hydrogen sulfide that we get. I would just like to repeat that that was at 250 to 500 parts per billion, which is also 0.25 to 0.5 parts per million. The applicant uses an assumed value of 36 parts per million for their Title V permit. This is a burden on our community. The EPA and even SCS Engineering's webinar, Staying Ahead of Odor Management in Solid Waste Facilities, states that the public recognizes hydrogen sulfide at 2 to 3 parts per billion. Mr. Levitt used a more conservative number. I experience the vagaries of how landfill stench moves on my daily jogs. At Mid-Valley and tucked behind a knoll at 500 feet, we get both the PRC and CBL. At the bottom of our quarter-mile driveway at 400 feet, the dump odors are more frequent. I look outside for inversions, cloud banks, which directions they're moving, and the color to decide which way I should go on my run. Sometimes I get a visual cue, other times I do not. I have a good nose, so I only report to DEQ when the odors are nauseating and only at my house. One DEQ report had Republic Services investigation that said nothing was smelled by their staff. However, a dead skunk was seen in the road. Soon after, I reported on a blast from the PRC, so we know the difference between compost, landfill stench, and a skunk. In sensory science, there is a condition called anosmia, or smell blindness, that can be caused by overexposure to a particular molecule. One known cause is exposure to hydrogen sulfide, which causes paralysis of the olfactory nerve. I've heard acrid chemical, vomit, feces, bad fart, rotten cabbage, sulfur, ammonia, nail polish remover, amongst other descriptors. While each person may perceive differently, our noses are far more accurate than Mr. Ledford's analysis. Odors are also dispersed by human-caused air currents. I am submitting still images But we have video which show garbage trucks tipping their load, creating swirling clouds that drift in multiple shifting directions. Near neighbors know when a leachate truck is being filled, our neighbors smell the smallest molecules, including hydrogen, sulfide that stay forever much longer. Please use your discretionary authority to deny this CUP. Thank you.
Move to Mr. Monroe, number 28, with Ms. Bradshaw, number 30 on deck. Don't see Mr. Monroe. So can we move then to Ms. Bradshaw, number 30?
Hi, my name is Julia Bradshaw and I live at 645 Northwest Callaway Drive, Corvallis. My home is approximately 2.5 miles from the landfill. I oppose this expansion and I want to acknowledge that Dr. Tsu, Dr. Condon, Dr. Gaia, Mr. Levitt from Beyond Toxics, a lot of their testimony I completely agree with. I'm going to make a couple of comments about odor and roadside trash, and then I've got a few questions I would like you to take into account. First, regarding odor, as I said, I live 2.5 miles from the landfill. There is an occasional odor, not every day, but under certain weather conditions, there is an odor. I also listened to Mr. Ledberg's analysis. I'm a layperson. It was pathetic. So I'm just going to say that Mr. Levitt said everything better than I did, but he didn't have any information other than this sort of random people putting into something onto a website that I don't know about, and I live close by. So who are these? Are these complaints being? What I really want to say is there needs to be a systematic search for complaints or for information, rather like that Mr. Levitt from Benton Toxics did in Adair Village. And second, regarding trash, I'm a cyclist. I cycle down Coffin Butte Road, and I feel that needs to be said on record that people do use that road. I come down Camp Adair Village, Camp Adair Road towards the landfill, Coffin Butte Road, and then return to my home via Tampico. As you cycle towards the landfill on the right-hand side, there is trash in the gutters and at the side of the roads. When you cycle away from the landfill, so when presumably the trucks are empty as they leave, there's less trash. It's just that's my observational data. So and then third, I couldn't believe this either, that landfill currently rises over 700 feet. I don't know of any trees that grow over 700 feet. I mean, it is a visual impact, and to suggest that it can be mitigated is mind-boggling. So the questions I have, why isn't the city of Albany not an agency contacted? They're actually closer to the landfill than the city of Corvallis if that rectangle was drawn in a different direction. Then I also would like to see these daily records of odor made in a public forum, that we actually could see that people are actually monitoring this and that this data was available to the general public. And then Mr. Brent Lurch said that in the end of 2025, that no more leachate was going to be sent to the Corvallis wastewater plant. Did I hear that correctly? Okay, thank you. And then to conclude, that Mr. Brian Roop said that we think about the 79,000 people of Benton County instead of just the 200 people who are submitting written testimony. That's crazy. I live close by. I should be, my comments and the comments of the people here should not be watered down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Bradshaw. Ms. Castle, number 31, with Mr. Kipper, number 34 on deck.
Planning Commission members, my name is Pam Castle, and I live at 993 Northwest Cypress Avenue in Corvallis, which is about 8 miles away from the landfill. I have a master's in pharmacology toxicology and am testifying in opposition to the expansion of the landfill. I'll skip the odor testimony. I do smell it at my home. But what I wanted to bring up were PFAS. And as reflected in discussions during the hearing, until recently, leachate presented the largest concern surrounding PFAS escaping landfills. Recently, the potential for long-distance distribution of PFAS from landfills via landfill gas has spurred its examination. 2023 review paper reported that of the yearly total mass of PFAS entering landfills, 6% escaped via landfill gas, while 10% escaped via leachate. Then a 2024 study of PFAS escape at 3 landfills in Florida found that 32 to 76% of the total fluorine that escaped via landfill gas was at least as greater or greater than the 24 to 68% that escaped via leachate. They concluded that it is likely that landfill gas is a major route of PFAS entering the environment. It is important to note that even though part of the landfill gas is captured and burned at flares, flares do not burn at a high enough temperature to mineralize PFAS into an inert salt. So flares do not mitigate PFAS. It is well documented that PFAS have a number of effects on human and biotic health. Among those are altered immune and thyroid function, liver and kidney disease, lipid and insulin dysregulation, adverse reproductive and developmental outcomes, and cancer. The 2023 review refers to landfills as, quote, unabating PFAS repositories, and states that landfill gas may account for more environmental deposition of PFAS than leachate, indicating that managing landfill gas is requisite for preventing long-term atmospheric transport of PFAS. A landfill expansion would increase our PFAS repository, making the human health, environmental, and economic burdens we pass on to future generations much greater. Given recent findings about PFAS in landfill gas, I contend that the landfill odor testimony by those of us in Corvallis is an important indicator of the widespread nature of landfill gas problem, and that PFAS are being spread over a large area when landfill gas is carried by air currents. This means landfill gas odor is not simply a nuisance issue, but a public health one. To allow the spread of PFAS would mean the county is not meeting Benton County's comprehensive plan policy 6.1.2, 6.1.4, 6.3.1. In addition, since studies show plants and animals accumulate PFAS, the landfill does seriously interfere with the ability of farmers on adjacent land to use their properties for their designated purposes. For these reasons, I urge the commission to deny the application.
Ms. Castle, I got a quick question. You went through those percentages rather quickly. So can you sort of summarize the PFAS going through the gas side versus the leachate side?
Yeah, so it's greater. It's at least as
like 2x, 3x?
I would say comparable, maybe slightly greater. That was 2024, so it's really new. I do have in my documents the first page of every reference that I used in making my testimony.
You had some ranges and you're going through them pretty quick. I was trying to make sure.
Sorry, I was trying to,
no, it's good.
to get it through in my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
You do have it all in writing. And as I said, you have the abstracts for every resource that I used.
Thank you.
Ms. Castle, I just want to clarify that question too. I've seen, I believe, some of your other written testimony. I'm not sure that I remember those numbers. So when you say that we have it in your written testimony, am I hearing that right?
I actually submitted a longer testimony about this before I came here, and then it is in the documents that I passed along.
Okay, and the date of your recent submittal is today's date then? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castle. Mr. Kipper. And following Mr. Kipper, we'll pause for a time check.
Good evening. My name is Robert Kipper. I live at 2133 Northwest Beechwood Place in Corvallis, Oregon. I am currently a member of the Benton County Disposal Site Advisory Committee. I am not representing committee tonight, but rather I'm a private citizen speaking on behalf of my family's third generation 80-acre woodlot north of Corvallis. I want to briefly highlight two emails my family sent in to the Planning Commission in opposition to CPU LU-24-027 application submitted by Republic Services to expand Coffin Butte Landfill. The first email from myself detailed the wildfire threat that a southern expansion of the landfill crossing the fire break that is Coffin Butte Road would create. If new landfill operations are created across Coffin Butte Road, there is the very real possibility of a fire running up the north slope of the ridge into our directly adjoining family property and beyond. In a summer heat dome wind event, embers could easily rain down on Adair Village and McDonald Research Forest with devastating consequences. The second email was sent in by my brother, Richard Kipper, just yesterday. His first issue with the proposed expansion is that our tax lot 314862 has its northwest corner at the 570-foot summit of the northern portion of Tampico Ridge. The proposed basalt buttress for the new landfill cell. When filled, it would rise an additional 130 feet above the ridge to a grand elevation of 700 feet. This would completely alter the character of our property forever. His second, even larger objection to the proposed expansion of the landfill activities onto our ridge is the likely drying out of our year-round springs and loss of a persistent pond that would forever alter the traditional use and character of our property. Our water right to the pond is recorded with the State Water Resources Department under certificate number 70845 HB-2153. Republic Services analysis of the hydrology of the water that flows through and out of this basalt ridge is inadequate to have any assurance this expansion onto Tampico Ridge will not destroy our water sources. It is not unreasonable to think that hard rock blasting and excavation of a very deep hole necessary to prepare the proposed new cell and the excavation of the leachate retention pond on the north side will inevitably pull water towards these massive holes and away from our northeast side of the ridge, drying out our year-round springs. This is an unacceptable change to the use and character of our adjoining property, Benton County Code 53.2151. We therefore request the Commissioner's recommended denial of the conditional use permit LU 24027 application submitted by Republic Services to expand the Coffin Butte landfill operations onto Tampico Ridge. Our family wants to thank the entire Planning Commission for your time and service representing the citizens of Benton County. The end.
Mr. Kipper, I do have a question. On the Tampico Ridge, I think you mentioned that you saw information about the new landfill or the proposed expansion to go higher than the top of the ridge?
Yes, 130 feet, I think is what they said.
And where was that? Because the stuff I saw originally was below the ridge. And so was that?
No, I believe the testimony was I guess back last Tuesday or Thursday was above the ridge.
Above the ridge.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kipper. I appreciate that. So to my colleagues, I think you've all been following along on the checklist as I have. By my best estimate, which is not exacting, we've completed approximately 40 of the 3-minute testimonies out of 72 signed up. So a little more than half.
Chair, it's actually 78 on our new list.
There are some that have been, I was subtracting the 5 from the bottom. I'm not sure if that's accurate. That's why my numbers may not
Chair
be.
Fowler.
The point,
Chair.
the point remains that there are somewhere between 30 and 40 additional speakers, and we sit at 850. We have essentially 3 options That is to go until we are complete this evening. We can continue the hearing to another day, likely Thursday. Or code does permit us to, at this point, at 9 o'clock, say that's all we can do.
Chair
So
Fowler?
Yes, Commissioner
Sorry,
Wilson.
it's Commissioner Wilson. I can turn my camera on if you'd like, but I don't have a copy of that list and it wasn't emailed to me prior to the meeting.
It is the list that as of 6 o'clock is the sign-up list. We'll have it updated. Our recorders and public information office have been keeping it much more up to date and current than the list that I have in front of me.
Oh, okay.
But
Is it at mute?
I think those numbers remain close to accurate.
Ask this procedural. If you extended into Thursday, would there be additional opportunity for people to sign up? It's done.
No,
Okay.
there are no additional signups. The signups closed at 6. In addition to the public testimony remaining, we do always provide for rebuttal time from the applicant. And we've previously gotten indication that the applicant would like to use that time. I'm not putting Mr. Condon on the spot, but there's probably 15 to 30 minutes of applicant rebuttal to the public testimony as well. So 30 plus speakers and 15 to 30 minutes of applicant rebuttal remains.
Chair Fowler, I'd like to propose that we continue the session on Thursday.
And is there a second to that?
I second.
Okay. Let me, before any further deliberation on that motion, make it a little more precise. We've typically met beginning at 6 p.m. Is that your intent in the motion?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. So we can consider the motion to be continue this hearing until 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 8th. I'd like to do an informal poll of the commissioners to ensure that we have a valid quorum for Thursday.
Excuse me, Chair, do you want to also put an end time on that as well?
I believe my indication and implication was that we would complete this activity on Thursday. And it could go past 9 o'clock. So let me first look at the planning commissioners that are here in person with a nod if you are available on Thursday. 3, 4, 5. And Commissioner Wilson, are you available on Thursday?
Yes, Chair Fowler, I'll be available on Thursday in person.
Very well. Commissioner Cash has exited for the evening, but she has indicated to me previously that she is also available. So I am confident that there is a quorum for Thursday. Any further deliberation before I call on the vote to continue the hearing Thursday? Commissioner Struthers.
It's more of a clarification in our process. By my count, there was 2 individuals who were signed up and were absent tonight. Would they, if they were available on Thursday, would they have an opportunity to testify?
Let me look to council to, if we have gone past in order someone who has signed up and is on our list, are they still entitled to the time?
It's really up to the planning commission. I would allow them if time permits, but if you're looking at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I would not.
Okay.
And also I would, the people who were on the list for tonight, but were not here tonight, I would put them last.
Agreed.
Okay, so any further deliberations? I will call for the vote on the motion to continue this hearing until 6 p.m. on Thursday, May 8th. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very well. Motion has passed, and we will then meet again on Thursday, May 8, 6 p.m. in this room. Thank you all for coming. We're adjourned.